For my assignment 7, I decided to conduct a report on the internal and external factors faced by Northwest Airlines and their almost 92 years of operations. I really stuck to four main solid points that you could look at with Northwest or any other airline. Um, those being lawsuits, strikes, and labor union factors, major accidents, and followed by the merger with Delta that happened in 2010. So I'm going to give you some brief history right now. Northwest was founded in 1926 and began operations in 1936. It started as a small domestic carrier within the United States, and by the very end, it was one of the largest in the world. Um, the uh, the company had various domestic hubs within the United States, Detroit being one of the largest, and that would take people or passengers from Detroit to Chicago, Detroit to JFK, Detroit to LA, and from there they could do international flights for the those individuals. Um, so I'll get to my first point here, which is lawsuits against the company. In aviation, lawsuits happen all the time, from damaged baggage to lost baggage to customer service, someone not getting treated properly. It happens all the time, and we hear about it all the time in the news. Um, so I really stuck to two big ones that really struck me and stuck out to me. The first one was settled in 2001, and it was about a snowstorm that occurred in 1999 over at the Detroit Metropolitan Airport. And basically, what happened was all the other commercial carriers stopped doing operations, but Northwest attempted pretty much to keep running the operations. When within like an hour, there's over 12 inches of snow, and a bunch of people got stuck in the planes because the plane's going to move. And from there, the passengers were stuck on the tarmac for almost 10 hours with no food. A lot of the airplanes ran out of fuel eventually, and like you couldn't use the labor services, so it ended up to be a big problem. And it was settled with $7.1 million split between 7,000 people that were affected by this. Um, Another one was a major lawsuit was Duncan versus Northwest Airlines case in 2000 when it was made to public. Um, Back in the day, I'd say 70s, 80s, even before, I'd say all the way from when aviation first started, 1904, when the Wright brothers conducted their first flight, all the way to 1980, smoking was available on an airplane. Um, that being said, a lot of the employees were non-smokers, such as the pilots and flight attendants. This being said, someone had to work the flight, and if you're going overseas, smoking was available, and these flight attendants would pretty much be sitting there getting secondhand smoke. So one of the flight attendants, Julie Duncan, um, sued Northwest Airlines because she felt that it went it by permitting smoking on these trans-Pacific flights, it breached their duty that provide a safe workplace for these employees. So she won that lawsuit, and pretty much from there, smoking on airplanes kind of settled out. It's illegal now, so it's definitely not an issue. The second category I did was the strikes and labor union factors, and one of the biggest strikes happened close to the end of the Northwest Airlines operations was in 2005 when all the Detroit-based mechanics walked off the job early because their union failed to agree on a demand for a $176 million wage and benefit cut. Um, more than 1,500 Detroit employees walked off the site, and from there, the Northwest president said none of them would be hired back, and majority of them were fired. From that point, there was a strike for 3 or 4 days, but after that, kind of phased out, and the company was able to hire more individuals and successfully keep running. The third point I made was major accidents. And like I said, from the time aviation started around 1904 up until I'd say even 2000s, even though some accidents have happened up to present time, it's inevitable. It's always going to be a possibility. But from in the 1900s, it was a huge problem. Planes were crashing all the time. It was not as safe as it is now. Um, so two that really struck me were in the was one in 1963 when one of the Boeing 720s departed Miami, and it kind of hit some rough weather. And and when this happened, it got caught in a cell and pretty much dove from 19,000 feet straight down into the earth, killing all 35 passenger and 8 crew on board. From there, the aviation, the NTSB, which is the National Board of Transportation, pretty much said that this weather, they shouldn't have taken off in this weather because it obviously proved deadly. And that was a huge change for the safety factor within the industry. That was more looked at. And another big one that was more looked at was this actually took place in Detroit in 1987. One of the 727s that was taken off, or it came from Saginaw and then landed in Detroit. And there's a last minute runway change to the shortest runway possible at Detroit Metro. And the crew did not set the flaps correctly because they were kind of going through the checklist pretty fast. And this caused them not to be able to gain lift and end up crashing at the end of the airport, killing all on board except one little girl. And this event was huge because it was in the late 1980s when things were kind of getting more safe as to air travel, and it was really it was looked at pretty hard because I mean it's a big safety issue if the crew's not doing their job properly. So Northwest was heavily fine with that and taking a look into. And the last point I have to make is the merge that happened between Delta and Northwest Airlines. Pretty much what happened here was there's many factors that took place. I mean, now in 2018 here, there's a few prominent airlines, Delta, Spirit, um, yeah. Well, those are huge ones. Um, Airlines at that time were having like this is when the job recession was happening. It was companies were gaining money and losing money really fast. So the merge kind of really just needed to happen. Delta was skyrocketing in the aviation industry, which caused some of these other carriers to have issues with passengers. So Delta and Northwest decided to merge in 2010, splitting the cost, splitting the employees. So it was a benefit to both of them. I know it was a really good idea for Northwest to do that at the time, or I don't know where they would have been now. But that pretty much wraps up my paper there in brief detail. Coming from the aviation industry, it was really interesting reading about Northwest because I've always heard about it, but I haven't dove into all these internal and external factors that not only them but every single company ever created would face. Even if it's non-aviation, they're always going to face some sort of issue. So it was really interesting reading up on that, and that was my assignment. All right, thank you. Bye.